First, we've got Mr. Robert Amugboro, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He is the lead counsel to the APC's team, including that of the APC Caretaker Extraordinary Committee, Convention Planning Committee. And then you also do have Richard Dobry, who is the lead counsel to Delta APC officials. It's about this matter, which some of you may have seen in the dailies or read, perhaps keeping tabs as well, about the Delta State High Court, which is reported to have restrained Governor Mai Mala Buni, along with other members, from acting or parading themselves as APC Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee, pending the determination of the substantive suit before the court. So, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Now, let me start with you, Mr. Dobry. Is that what the court actually ruled on? What is the situation?
Yes, good morning. The claimant applicants. Can you hear me?
Go ahead,
Can
please.
you hear me clearly? Yes. The claimant applicants, made up of 7 persons, approached the Delta State High Court, challenging the propriety of the World Congress that was conducted on the 31st of July 2021, and also the propriety of a proposed intended local government congress, which is slated to take place on the 4th of September 2021. In view of this, the claimants filed an ex parte application. They filed an ex parte application, and the ex parte application was supposed to take place on the 24th day of August 2021. But unfortunately, I represent the claimant applicants, and unfortunately, if I go to the court, a lawyer who was present in the court, who was not even briefed by the defendant, although he came for a separate matter entirely, saw the matter on the court stage and indicated interest to defend the defendant. And in view of that, the court adjourned the matter to the first day of September 2021 for the ex parte application to be moved. Now, in the ex parte application, the claimant applicant asked for 6 principal reliefs. 6 principal reliefs and omnibus relief, which makes it a total of 7 reliefs. Now, in the ex parte application we filed, we also attached an originating summons. We filed along the ex parte application the originating summons, which is to be sent on the defendant. Now, in our ex parte application, the reliefs we asked for, relief 1 practically deals with asking the court to hear the matter on the application, which is holiday. Then relief 2, 3, and 4 has to do with issue of service, while relief 5 and 6 has to do with an order of interim injunction. Now, the very day, which is the 1st of September, the matter came up. The defendants raised an issue of jurisdiction. They raised an issue of jurisdiction, which...
All right, Mr. Dobry, before you get into that part of the issue of jurisdiction, let me equally bring in Mr. Amugboro and ask him if it's the same ruling, if that is his interpretation, before we go into all of those other parts which you are just about to highlight. Mr. Amugboro, please give us your response. Is that what your interpretation is of what the court actually ruled on?
Now I can thank you very much for having me on your program, and good morning, everybody. I do not know why my learned friend is trying to hide behind so many words a very simple question. Was there an order against the chairman and members of the APC caretaker and the extraordinary convention planning committee? The court made no such order. The only evidence of an order of court is that the proceedings, the record of the proceedings of the court itself, that's the record book, or a certified true copy of that court order. My learned friend has a copy of that certified true copy, and if he doesn't have it, that will be very sad, because the court declined to make an order restraining the chairman to members of the caretaker / extraordinary convention planning committee from acting or parading themselves as such members. The court declined to make that order. That's the 5th relief they asked for on their ex parte application. Now, on that 5th relief, there is an alternative relief, which is an order of interim injunction restraining the chairman and members of the caretaker / extraordinary convention planning committee from conducting the local government and state congresses to elect officers. The court also declined to make this order and proceeded to specifically say that the only interim order it is making is in respect of the 15th defendant. In order to properly understand the order of the court, I think I need to point out that in the originating summons filed by the claimants, there are 3 sets of defendants. The first set of defendants, even though it's not a set, is the APC itself. It is the first defendant. It is in respect of APC that I am lead counsel. Now, the second set of defendants are the chairman and members of the caretaker / extraordinary convention planning committee. They are the second to the 14th defendants. These are the second set of defendants. The third and the last set of defendants is the 15th defendant. That is Mr. Jones Irui, who is sued in his capacity as the chairman of the Delta State APC caretaker committee, executive of that state. So we have these 3 sets of defendants. Now, I need to also point out that in the ex parte application that my learned friend filed, no order was sought against APC as the first defendant. No other ex parte whatsoever on the face of his ex parte application. He didn't ask for any relief against APC. That is the party. Now, the relief that he sought for was against the second to the 14th defendants. These are the second set of defendants. That is the chairman and the members of the caretaker / extraordinary convention planning committee. Those are the only persons that even constitute the gravamen of the case that he filed, challenging their appointments on several grounds. But the court didn't make this order against the second to 14th defendants. The court declined to make the order. Now, the order the court made. Yes.
Yeah. So since that's your perspective of the matter, Mr. Darby. So tell us then, how come you say the court made that order, but he's just given and read out some of the matters from the CTC, which he says is God. So could you then buttress your point with more information as to whether or not that order was made?
Are you with me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, like I said, 5 and has to do with training release the claimant applicants sought for. Now the court granted relief 5. The court granted relief 5, and relief 5 has an alternative as well. The court granted relief 5 and addressed relief 5 paragraph A. The court limited itself to the Delta State chairman, which is Odero Jones, and not the APC national chairman. Now, relief 5, the claimant asked for, include order of the Honorable Court stopping the Congress of the local government election is to be held on the 4th of September 2021. The paragraph A includes an order restraining the 2nd to the 15th respondent from parading themselves as chairman and critical committee. Now the court proceeded and stated that paragraph A is limited to the Delta State chairman and not me. And the national chairman of the AP has accepted that fact that the local government Congress election slated on the 4th of September 2021 with respect to Delta State is cancelled by an order of court. The national chairman itself has acknowledged that fact. The order is there.
Mr. Dalbury, let's be sure that we're on the same page here. It appears we're not singing from the same hymn sheet. First, because the CTC, it appears at least there are 2 CTCs in circulation here. So we're trying to find out which is which. So from the ruling that you have, the CTC that you have of the ruling you're citing, who was the first claimant in that particular one?
The first claimant is Elvis Asamoah, who is the deputy APC chairman of Delta State, while the first defendant is All Progressive Congress, APC. The second defendant is Marva Laduni. And the 15th defendant in question is Jones Odero.
Okay. So, but, all right, Mr. Mokoro, how about yours? Who's the first claimant in the CTC you're citing?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. There are no 2 CTCs. My learned friend is just simply dissembling. Let him read the order he has with him. If it carries a certified true copy, they are exactly the same. You see, when he was giving his answers, he didn't claim that the order he has with him restrains the caretaker/extraordinary convention planning committee. All he said was that, the national chairman has accepted and has said that the Congress is cancelled. I don't know where he got that information from, but whatever he's saying is not reading from the order. There is just one order, there is just one certified true copy. That is why I say he's just simply dissembling. Let him read the order he has to the Nigerian public and let them be clear. I'm shocked at this kind of behavior. It is almost bordering on professional misconduct. There is an order, there is just one order from the Asaba State High Court. There is no other order circulating anywhere. Let him read what he has.
Mr. Dalbury, tell us then, which order do you have? So could you go ahead and read that then? Because it's not the same one that he is referring to. Mr. Dalbury, that's for you.
The order is the same order. My learned senior is just trying to misdirect the public. His own interpretation. Now, like I said, relief 5 clearly states When the 596, just a second, an order of interim injunction of this honorable court, restraining second defendant respondent from further
Okay,
acting.
Mr. Dabri, just hang on a minute. We need to try that connection again so that we could all hear you properly, because it's a bit woolly and not that clear. Mr. Omegboro, looking through this now, because yes, we'll get him to read exactly which order he's got. But two different documents out there, and some of them, if I both have same stamps, because this CTC that you cite from also has the same name from the one that he is citing. So, and we see almost the same kind of signature. So, what's going on?
Well, I am aware of just one order, duly certified, duly paid for, with the receipt on it. And that order that I'm aware of, the interim order given by the court is expressly limited to 15 defendants. I dare say I cannot imagine my learned friend from the claimant saying that the order is directed at the second to the 14th defendants. I cannot imagine him saying so, that the order the court made is directed at the second to 14th defendant. The order is explicit, and it reads that this order affects only the 15th defendant. That is the order that the court made, limited to only the 15th defendant. And it says it is the alternative prayer 5 that is granted only in relation to the 15th defendant. Alternative prayer 5 only is granted in relation to the 15th defendant. That is the only order that court made. And if my learned friend for the claimant is saying that the court made any order against the second to the 14th defendant, then that must be a matter for the disciplinary committee of the NBA to look into. Okay, because I don't know where that order came from. I do not know where that order came from that I'm referring to.
Okay, let's do a comparison, as it were, so that we can lay this bare and ensure that there are no hidden agenda, or at least there are no misconceptions, as it were. So just to be sure this is what you have, I'm going to read the alternative 5, which I think you're referencing. It says, an order of interim injunction of this honorable court restraining the second to 14th defendants and respondents from conducting the local government and state congress slated for 4th September 2021 or any other date. To that extent, is that the same thing you have?
No, that is not the order of the courts. That is just the courts reciting the relief.
No, I'm reading the alternative. I'm reading the alternative. I'm not reading the order of the court. I just want to be sure that's the alternative you have as well.
Yes, that's the alternative relief. Yes, that is their alternative relief.
Okay, let me go on. So we are sure that first... No, I understand. We'll get there. But first, I want to go through that alternative. Then we'll now talk about what the court ordered. But let's be sure that you have the same alternative as we have here. So it goes on to say any other date and any other congress of the first defendant in Delta State, pending the hearing and determination of the motion or notice already filed and served. Is that the same thing you have?
That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes.
Okay. Now, going to the order now, which is, I think, the bone of contention.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it says reliefs. Exactly. I'm reading the other parts. Reliefs 1, 2, 3, 4, and alternative prayer 5 of the motion ex parte are hereby granted. Is that what you have?
Yes.
Okay, it goes on to say alternative prayer 5 is granted only in relation to the 15th defendant, right?
That is correct.
Good. So let's start from the reliefs 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's clear that one out, and then we'll talk about the alternative 5, which seems to be the bone of contention. So when the reliefs 1, 2, 3, 4 are granted, what does that mean? So Nigerians can understand, because I believe some people may have gotten the wrong one, perhaps some have the right one. So what does that mean first?
Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative relief they claimed, yes. Okay. That is the alternative Now the reliefs 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are what we will call preliminary reliefs. The first relief 1 is to enable this case to be heard during the court's vacation. Because ordinarily, when the court is on vacation, cases are not heard unless they fall within the remit of cases that are classified as urgent cases. But you also need the permission of the court for that case to be heard. That is relief 1. Relief 2 now relates to the 1st to 14th defendants. Since their address for service is in the FCT Abuja, the processes of the Delta State High Courts do not have the force of law outside Delta State unless there is compliance with the provisions of the Sheriffs and Civil Processes Act, which requires an endorsement to be put on that process for service outside the territorial jurisdiction of Delta State High Court. So that is what relief number 2 deals with. What they have sought for is for leave to issue and serve the objection summons on APC and the second set of defendants outside the territory of Delta State Court in the FCT High Court. That's relief number 2. Now, relief number 3 has to do with substituted service on the 2nd to 14th defendants to allow them to be served at the APC headquarters in Abuja on any staff. So they don't need to serve them personally. You can serve on any staff or any person who meets at the APC secretariat. The 4th relief is also another for substituted service on the 15th defendant, which is that it too should be served at the state secretariat. So those are the first 4 reliefs. So you see them basically, they are preliminary reliefs to deal with the issue of service and to enable the processes to be served outside the jurisdiction of the territory of Delta State.
So building up from there, just to clear that air, so at least a lot of Nigerians are on the same page with this conversation. So let's talk about the naughty alternative prayer 5, which of course has been causing a lot of controversy. So the order goes on to say alternative prayer 5 is granted only in relation to the 15th.
Can I just jump in here?
Okay, go on, please.
In order to have a proper perspective on prayer 5, you need to understand that prayer 5 has 2 legs. There are 2 reliefs claimed. There is a main relief that was claimed, and then there's an alternative relief. Now, the main relief 5 is to stop the chairman and members of the caretaker/extraordinary convention planning committee from acting or parading themselves. That is the main prayer on prayer 5. From acting or parading themselves as such members. So that's the main prayer 5. Now, the alternative to the prayer 5 is now to stop them, that is the caretaker, the chairman of the caretaker/extraordinary convention planning committee, from conducting the local government or the state congress election. So you see, the main prayer, stop acting as members of this committee. Alternatively, do not conduct this local government and state congress election. Now, the courts did not grant the main relief 5, which is to stop them from acting or parading themselves as members of this committee. That relief was clearly declined. Now, with regards to the alternative prayer, I make bold to say that alternative prayer too was declined to the extent that the court did not make an order against the chairman / members of the extraordinary convention planning committee. Because that is what they sought for in the alternative. In the alternative, they sought for an order against the 2nd to 14th defendants. The 2nd to 14th defendants are the chairman of and members of the caretaker/extraordinary convention planning committee. The court declined to make this order. The court rather proceeded, as it was empowered to make that order, that alternative order, against the 15th defendant, who is the state's caretaker chairman of the APC. Meanwhile, in the guidelines for the conduct of this Congress, the body saddled with the conduct of the Congress is the World Congress Committee, a 7-member committee who are not even parties to this case. The guideline says there shall be a 7-man World Congress Committee appointed to conduct the World Congresses. And then you also have a similar committee for the local governments and the state congresses. So these are the persons saddled with the responsibility of conducting.
Let me come in now, if I may. So how did the 15th defendant come into Alternative 5? Because Alternative 5 is quite clear. It says an order of interim injunction of this honorable court restraining the 2nd to the 14th defendant respondent from conducting the local government and state congress slated for that date. That's what it says clearly. So the 15th defendant was not even referenced in Alternative 5. So how do you now interpret? So how do you interpret Alternative 5 in the context of the order now bringing in the 15th defendant?
You see, in the nature of any application you make to the court is empowered to make whatever order it feels will meet the justice of the case. So they did not seek for an order against the 15th defendant. They didn't seek for such an order. But the court, in its own wisdom, decided that the only party it wants to make an order against is the 15th defendant. And that is the person the order was made against by the court. The fact that you have asked for a specific relief does not mean that the court may not be able to grant you whatever relief the court feels will meet the justice of the case. Now, let me put this thing within a proper context again. It is important to understand that at the time this ex parte application was being taken, we had long filed and served a notice of preliminary objection.
Mr. Mokoro, now that particular point, it's another, okay, we'll take a look at that because, I mean, he also, in some of the arguments out there, raised concerns about those processes, which we'll talk about when we come back in just a moment. Don't go away. All right, welcome back. We've been trying to get back Mr. Richard Darby, so we'll go to him now and hope that it can or will come out clearly. So, Mr. Darby, let's hope this works this time. Well, yes, I'm sure you got quite a number of things to highlight. Having heard Mr. Mokoro say that, well, the CTC you say you're citing, it's not the right one. And if it's not the right one, it's a matter that the disciplinary committee of the NBA will have to look into. So are you telling us on authority that what you cite now is part of the records of the court? Is that the authentic CTC of the ruling you've got?
Yes, like I said, the ruling I have is the certified true copy. There's no two ruling in respect of this subject matter. We just have a single ruling, and it's a certified true copy I have. Now it depends on my learned senior's interpretation. Like I said, the relief 5 and 6 has to do with the injunctive reliefs. Now the court granted relief 5. Then proceeded and said, with respect to the issue of parody itself, it's limited to the Delta State APC chairman. That's what the court said. And the order is very clear. So I don't know why my learned senior is saying that the order is gotten from somewhere else.
So the copy, the version that you have, did you restrain the APC Caretaker Extraordinary Committee and Governor Mai Mala Buni from parading themselves
like I rightly said, with regards to the issue of parading itself, I said it's limited to the APC Delta State Chairman. But however, the fifth reading, which the claimant applicants asked for, is granted with respect to an interim injunction restraining the conduct of the election in Delta State. The Congress, in Delta State. Relief 5 is not separated. Relief 5 is a single relief.
Okay, so you're saying that, if you can hear me, so you're saying that this is just restricted to the state caretaker chairman and not the national caretaker chairman?
With respect to the issue of parading himself as the chairman of the Delta State APC.
So what about with respect to conducting the congresses?
It stopped already. By virtue of all this order, the Congress is stopped.
Can you, forgive me, I think we have to do this so we're sure that we're going through the same order. Can you read that part of the order that specifically references the fifth relief and maybe the alternative fifth relief so that we're sure? If you could read it verbatim, just to be sure.
The fifth relief stated clearly, an order of interim injunction of this honorable court restraining the 2nd to the 14th defendant respondent from conducting local government and state congress slated for 4th of September 2021 or any other date and any other congress of the first defendant, which is APC, in Delta State, pending the hearing and determination of this motion on notice already filed and served.
Alternative you just read. Is that the fifth or the fifth or the alternative fifth?
The alternative fifth.
So can you read the fifth itself?
Yes, let me go through the fifth for you.
Okay.
The fifth itself.
Yes.
An order of interim injunction of this honorable court restraining the 2nd to the 14th defendant respondent from further acting or parading themselves as members of the caretaker extraordinary convention planning committee of the first defendant, which is APC itself.
That's the APC. Okay, so yes. In granting the order, what part, if you could just read it, references the fifth relief specifically, or where you reference the fifth relief, what part of the order, if you could just read it, says the fifth relief was granted?
You know, like I rightly said, the fifth relief is a single relief and it's not separated. The fifth relief.
I just want you to read. Yeah, I understand that. Just so I'm sure again that we're reading the same thing. Can you just read that part of the order that was granted eventually that speaks to the fifth relief? Are you there?
Let me proceed from here. Stated that the affidavit in support contains sufficient grounds for the grant of the release being sought. Relief 1, 2, 3, and 4, like I said, 4, has to do with issues of service. And now,
please go on.
Sorry?
Please go on. Go on.
Alternative prayer 5 of the motion expressed are hereby granted. Also, alternative prayer 5 is granted only in relation to the 15 defendants.
So,
in compliance with order 39. Sorry?
Pardon me. So, does it reference relief 5 or alternative 5?
Relief 5 itself.
But you just read that alternative prayer 5. That's what you just read.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's alternative 5, not relief 5.
Like I said, the relief 5 is a single relief. The relief 5 is granted and the alternative is granted as well.
No. It doesn't say relief 5 is granted and alternative is granted. It says, and I mean, you just read it, reliefs 1, 2, 3, 4, and alternative prayer 5 of the motion ex parte are hereby granted. I don't think it speaks specifically, at least from what I see, to prayer 5, just alternative
Exactly.
5. Or am I getting it wrong?
I believe you are getting it wrong.
But it's English.
Wow.
I just well, let's take this back to the senior advocate. Am I getting it wrong? I think this is English. It says clearly alternative prayer 5 of the motion ex parte is hereby granted. It doesn't say 5. That's what the senior advocate.
It does not say 5. You are absolutely spot on. That you are absolutely spot on. That is what the order says. Alternative relief 5 of the motion ex parte are hereby granted. And there is now a qualification even to that granting of the alternative relief 5. It says alternative prayer 5 is granted only in relation to the 15th defendant. I do not know how clearer this order could have been couched. I need for my learned friend to say that prayer 5 is 1. I mean, it's mind-boggling. There is alternative means or. You have a main relief. If you cannot grant me this main relief, then you may grant me the other. The two cannot be granted together. That's an elementary principle of law. If you refuse the main relief, you may be able to grant the alternative. And the court, in granting the alternative, pinpointed that alternative 5 is granted with a qualification, i.e., its grant excludes the second to the 14th defendants.
So is it that he's taking them as though is he his own? I'm sorry. Is it that he's trying to interpret this saying, well, both relief 5 and the alternative, if you grant either or, both will be the same thing? Is that the way it's coming across? That's how he's interpreting it?
Unfortunately, I do not want to go so far as to say that the interpretation is given is preposterous. I don't want to go that far, but I mean, we are all looking at this same order. The order itself brings no any kind of ambivalence. The main relief 5 was not granted. Even the alternative relief 5 in the form in which they sought for it was not granted either. What was granted was a qualified alternative prayer 5. And the qualification removed the second to the 14th defendants. That is the chairman, stroke member, and the members of the caretaker stroke extraordinary convention planning committee from the ambit of the operation of the order. I think I also need to point out very, very importantly that even the qualified alternative relief 5 that was granted is directed at the 15th defendant not to conduct. It is not directed at the election itself. It is directed at an individual person. You, this number 15 defendant, you should not conduct the local government or the state Congress election. It is the 15th defendant that is restrained. It is the 15th defendant that can be held to violate any order. So that is directed at the 15 defendants.
Wait, if that were the case, but what they were trying to do is to ensure that they don't even conduct that election itself. So if he doesn't conduct it and somebody else conducts the election, wouldn't they have defeated, the quote unquote the rest in this matter?
Well, the order that the courts made, yes, you can apply for an order. And the court, like I said, is empowered to give whatever order it deems fit to make in all the circumstances of the case. Let me put a particular context to, I really cannot hazard a guess as to why the court decided to make the order against the 15th defendant alone. I cannot hazard a guess as to why that happened. But when you place this case within a proper context, that we are in a state high court in respect of a claim challenging the appointment by the first defendant, APC, of the second to 14th defendant. This appointment did not take place in Asaba. This appointment took place in Abuja, a place outside the territorial jurisdiction of the High Court of Delta State. That is the primary issue that is in the case. This whole case, the originating summons. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. This whole case, the foundation, the gravamen of the originating summons itself is a direct challenge to the appointment of the second to the 14th defendants. This appointment was challenged on the basis of Section 183 of the Constitution, Article 17 of the APC Constitution, and decision of the NEC of the first defendants, extending the tenure of this committee. So this is the crux of the case. The entire crux of this case revolves around the second to the 14th defendant and the decision of the NEC of the first defendant. All of these events took place in Abuja, a place outside the territorial jurisdiction of the Delta State High Court. These are the matters
you were making a point about certain proceedings and processes, because he argued that in an ex parte matter, you cannot bring question of jurisdiction when it's not a substantive suit.
Well, I honestly do not know where that authority is from. The authorities of the Supreme Court that I'm aware of, and there are numerous of them, is basically that when a challenge to the jurisdiction of the courts has been filed and urged on the court itself, the court must be wary not to make any ex parte order or indeed any injunctive order until the issue of its jurisdiction is sorted out. Now, the general rule of law is that when you have an ex parte application, it's a one-party proceeding, i.e. only the applicant is meant to be heard. That's not really the question here.
But
the
isn't
question is when you have, yes, when you have an ex parte application.
Yeah, because in this case, if it's a 7-day application ruling, isn't the essence of that usually supposed to be in an emergency case when the matter for which they approach the court for would have been destroyed if the ex parte is not granted? Isn't that the intention?
Exactly. That is the intention, where the race will be destroyed. In this case, there is no emergency, but the court has placed the matter to be heard during the vacation. So that is no longer an issue to even be agitated anymore, in the sense that the court has said, well, I want to hear this case during vacation, it has shown sufficient urgency. So that's neither kind of that. But the point I wish to make is, when you have two applications simultaneously pending before a court, there is an ex parte for injunction, there is a notice of preliminary objection. At this point, you have no power to entertain this case. You have no power to make any order in this case. What does prudence dictate? That was the point I sought to make. And there are numerous Supreme Court authorities on it. Once your jurisdiction
we're
will entertain a case.
Senior Advocate,
yes.
We're winding down on this. We'd like to get Mr. Dobri's closing thoughts. So 2 issues raised. Was this a matter of emergency, really? Because that's essentially why we have, ex parte set up in the first place, so that you can preserve a matter before things go all right. So how much of an emergency was this? And secondly, if you say that really 5 is 1, vote 5 and the alternative, but still you say that the order is just for the state caretaker chairman. Don't forget, in the fifth order, not the alternative, you have even the national caretaker chairman in that. So don't you think you contradict yourself clearly when you say 5 is 1, but still you say that it's just concerning the state caretaker chairman? So if you could just take those two up in a minute or two, we'll appreciate that. That's for Mr. Dobry, by the way.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, like my learned senior rightly said, he said the issue, the claimants or the defendants in question in this suit, some are based in Abuja, which is outside our jurisdiction. The 15th defendant in question, though appointed by the National Caretaker Committee, is resident in Asaba. Now, already Rule 4 of the High Court of Delta State Civil Procedural Rules provides all other suits may be commenced and determined in the judicial division in which the defendants reside or carries on business, in which the cause of action arose. Now, the 15th defendant, though appointed by the National, is resident in Delta State, Asaba, and carries out his function. In fact, we are not even supposed to go into the issue of jurisdiction for now, because the issue of jurisdiction is still yet to be determined by the court.
I understand so many issues. It's just about the emergency and then the contradiction around Relief 5 and the alternative. If you say they are 1, yet you choose just the other side, but yet you say they are 1, don't you contradict yourself that way?
No. It's not contradictory.
No, you said that the order just concerns the state caretaker chairman, but in the Relief 5, not the alternative, it references the national...
Now, if you clearly examine the order, relief, or the alternative relief, which has to do with the restraining order, stopping the conduct of the Congress, is in Delta State, and not the national. And that's why the court in its ruling said alternative 5A is limited to the 15th defendant. The Congress itself is not to be carried out in Abuja. The Congress itself is to be carried out in Delta State, and not in Abuja or any other state. The Congress, the claimants, applicants are challenging, has to do with a Congress slated to hold on the 4th of September 2021 in Delta State. And that is why the court limited it to the 15th defendant.
All right, gentlemen, Mr. Richard Dobry, we need to thank you. Richard Dobry is the lead counsel to the Delta APC officials, and then Mr. Robert Omukboro, senior advocate of Nigeria, who's lead counsel to the APC. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us today. Sanusi Musa is a member of the APC. He's also a legal practitioner. He joins us from Kano. And then Yunus Otanko is publicity secretary of head of public affairs of NC Front. Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. So, having heard the suggestions, we heard from that of the Borno State governor just now, but then Zamfara State taking certain measures to ensure that they curb this security challenge of banditry or terrorism that they do have. We also have seen recommendations and measures taken by Kaduna State restricting certain movements at certain times. So, Mr. Tanko, tell us, those measures, I mean, they always welcome whatever measure that can provide solutions. How would you assess those steps that are being taken and perhaps from those states, for instance?
Okay, good morning, Nigeria. Chamberlain and Kari, it's nice to see you after the drama of the hazard of the job. And then quickly, to mention the issue of Zamfara State. We all know that Zamfara neighbors around 4 states, Sokoto, Kebbi State, Kaduna, and Katsina State. Interestingly, the population in Zamfara State is about 9.2 million people, with a land mass of about 15,350 square miles, and then with 14 local governments. Of course, Zamfara also neighbor an international country, Niger, up in the north. Predominantly, the people in Zamfara State are farmers, but of course, the advent of discovery of gold in that particular state become an interesting situation. Not also excluding the issue of internal politics that has bedeviled the state for quite a while. So some of these indices is good to take into notice of what is happening in Zamfara State. Unfortunately, at a point in time, the state itself have been having a lot of killing. That's why sometimes when I hear this issue of killing, some small killings that take place in the north, in the advent of probably colonizing certain direction of the country in terms of religious aspect, I find it difficult to understand. Almost on daily basis, quite a lot of people are being killed in Zamfara State as if they are chickens. And that for me is unacceptable. The issue about the suggestions or the actions being taken by some of the governors in Kaduna and possibly Niger State and other states, it seems to me is a kind of a choreographed idea of trying to find a short-term solution to the problem. Now, quite honestly, we all know that some of these people who are creating problem for the country have also needs, domestic needs, in terms of petrol, in terms of food, in terms of other amenities. So probably the government is thinking that the best way to cut down some of these supplies to these bandits or kidnappers is to reduce the usage of either getting fuel in jerry cans, probably the movement of cattle, which of course, movement of cattle and markets on a weekly basis is an opportunity being given to some of them to use in transporting possibly weapons and other information gathering system. So in order to curb that particular idea, the government is now trying to shut down those particular measures so that they could have a kind of a lead way of trying to tackle the issue. But for me, the long-term plan is much more important, whereby the government, of course, will find out exactly what is the root cause of the problem and trying to have a direct contact. Interestingly, I am very, very sure that a lot of information is at the desk of the chief security officers of the states. Majority of them have full information as regard to what is happening within their localities, and they, of course, unfortunately, fail to really take decisive measures with regard to how they deal with it. I think there have been a lackadaisical attitude towards the issue.
Uncle, let's bring in Mr. Musa as well.
It has reached a crescendo. It
Not
is
to
now
worry.
time for them to take more decisive action.
All right, well, we'll still come back to you in a minute, but let's get Mr. Sanusi to also give us his opening thoughts on how this is panning out. So, Mr. Musa, go ahead. How does this come across to you?
Well, I think it's something that worries every Nigerian, but I don't want to see it as something that will surprise all of us, because this is a systematic decade that has been going over the years. It is not something that has started yesterday or day before yesterday, because I saw a video yesterday which shows some of the bandits holding a carnival sort of in the bush. It shows you that there is a lot of weapons in their hands. And I think my main problem is the way we look at the failure. If we always look at the failure at the doorstep of the executive alone or the president alone, then we always get it this way. Chamberlain, over the years, not only there, all over the country, kidnappers have been arrested. Have we been following up to see what happened with their prosecution? It's whose fault? Is it the executive that's supposed to prosecute that is delaying the trial, or the judiciary that's supposed to carry on the trial. So this is something that we must put everybody on the spot, and holistically, all of us must see this fight against terror and banditry as a fight that all of us must come together to fight, irrespective of our own political affiliation. Otherwise, at the end of the day, we'll never get to where we're supposed to be. And also the politicians. I want to say this to all of us, because if we continue to, let me say, support or in a way, promote thuggery, political thuggery, is what normally translates what we have today. And also the issue of corruption that people don't want to talk about. I mean, I have seen the data of the Nigerian police, and going by the United Nations recommendation of having 400 people to one policeman, we are not understaffed by the number of the police we have. But then, why is it that they are not performing their duties? What happened to the budgetary allocation we do year in, year out? The only
Okay,
thing
Mr.
is
Musa,
the idea and the
quite a number of issues that you raised. So if we could just see how much of that we can unpack. When you say all of us, and then you equally refer to politicians who have thugs, political thuggery,
yes,
which you say eventually results in these kind of things. So one, you lay the blame at the feet of politicians, suggesting when they hire thugs, they don't do whatever they're supposed to do, and then it ends up like this. That's one. But what exactly are you suggesting that this all of us do? And who are the us? Is it general public or politicians?
No, when I say us, I mean the elites, the politicians, the media people like you, the civil servants, the business community, the religious leaders. I think they are the ones that will come together and shape the society, because the masses are just like a group of hearts. You know, the herdsmen are this group of elites, that whatever they decide is where the direction of the country goes. If the civil servant decide to do their work correctly, if the politicians decide to discharge their duties correctly, if the media decide to keep to its duty of being the fourth rim of the estate, by checking not only the executive, following up with specific cases, like the case of the notorious kidnapper in Lagos, what is happening that, you know, we have seen in the cases of O.J. Simpson, where the CNN was able to be following the trial from day to day. Those are the kind of things that all of us will have to do, so that we'll be able to know where the problem lies and tackle it. But this
we can't hear you. We lost. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Maybe it's me then. Could you hear?
Yes.
Oh, my apologies. I think it must have been me.
No problem.
Go ahead, please.
No problem. Because this issue of this holier than thou attitude, this holier than thou attitude, that I think I'm not the problem, the president is the problem. No, the governor think it is the National Assembly that is the problem, will never take us anywhere. All of us will have to admit that we have failed the country. We have failed the people. It's not about who is the president, who is the best, because all of us in a way or one way or the other are contributory to what is happening in this country today. And nobody can be happy with this.
Well, Mr. Musa, I think I get the point you're raising. I think I get the point you're raising,
Yeah.
but I'd like us to take it in context, proper context. I mean, because if you say everybody should do this, I mean, people imagine, I mean, interpretations are different. I recall in Plateau State, people thinking, essentially take your protection into your hands, take laws into your hands as well, arm yourselves and the rest. So when you say it's everybody should take the blame, how do you factor in the fact that we have a government? The essential responsibility of a government is security and welfare. It is there in the Constitution. So people will tell you that, I mean, it doesn't talk about the people. It essentially talks about government. So government is meant to lead in that sense. So if people blame the government, don't you think they have a right? Because they gave the mandate to secure their lives, give them welfare to the government, and for them, they do not see those things happening. So rather than say, okay, it's my fault, they say, well, I gave the mandate to government and government is not performing. So don't you think people are right in that light to say the government is not performing?
Okay, let me put it this way. Why will the governor of Zamfara State go to when in a meeting with the security official to say that they are calling on the government to the president to declare state of emergency? Haven't you read Section 305? If the governor truly is not that he's making a political statement, he wants the state of emergency to be declared, let him go and read Section 305. It has given him the way to go about it. It's not about when you are meeting with people, say it to the public. Let him walk the talk. Let him, together with the State House of Assembly, follow the procedure established by the Constitution so that they will request the president properly to declare state of emergency in the state. But that is just an example of the way all of us play politics with this issue. Then now everybody will say, the poor people that don't even understand the Constitution will say, the president has refused to declare state of emergency because the governor has said that the state of emergency should be declared. But the governor is not to say that state of emergency should be declared on the TV or when meeting with people. The Constitution has given him a procedure to follow, more especially when you go to Section 305. So why can't he do that? These are the kind of things that all of us should stop doing and do the right thing so that we go and check this head on. When I talk about the government, is it only the president that we elected or the National Assembly? They appointed judges. We have the Ministry of Justice that is filled with lawyers. Are they prosecuting the cases properly? What of the police? So these are the things that I think that all of us will have to take and be checking it. I mean, trying to see that where really the blame is. Because if we continue with this blanket blame of saying everything is like this, we may not get why we went. Yes, the people have the right to question the government, but the people also have a duty to assist the government in discharging its duty. If people are, putting the police on the spot and the judiciary, they can be able to pinpoint to the executive that this is what is happening there. They can be able to pinpoint to the judiciary, this is what this particular judge is doing. He ought not to be a judge. Simple. So this is what I mean. This is how we can be able to come to holistically tackle this issue. Otherwise, it will continue. And I think this is very important. Let me say it today. There is need for a meeting of general stakeholders in this country. If I think the president may need to revisit the issue of Chief Akinyele's committee that was set up by General Sani Abacha, we need to have a national reconciliation committee because there is a lot of anger among the people which easily lead to unnecessary violence. Then I think that committee may likely be able to meet with various stakeholders. And if possible, each state should set up a reconciliation committee. That committee, I think, will be able to get the data of what is going on and how to tackle it. And also try to see that who are real culprits are. Because I can tell you that the little experience I have, the culprit in this security situation is more within all of us, those who cover it, those who refuse to carry out investigation, those who refuse to try the people, those who give them bail to go and commit another offense tomorrow. If we don't take this holistically and we continue to say that, it is the fault of the president, I'm afraid we may not be able to get where we want to get. And I think it is not good because we are deserting India.
Well, Mr. Tanko, Mr. Musa suggests that politicians, of which you're one, should remove the speck in their eye first before looking for the wood in somebody else's, saying they're just basically playing the ostrich because all of those dogs that are hired are part of the problem.
Well, while I agree that the citizens have a right to do what they are supposed to do as citizens, but I disagree completely when we talk about not apportioning blame to those who are saddled with the responsibility of governance. Number one, because when you give somebody your own vote, it is believed that you have given him the power to correct or lead you in the right direction. And if he or she failed in that direction, of course, the blame will be laid squarely on that particular leader. And this leadership, of course, comes from probably within, even from the ward level, from the councillor, the local government chairman, and members of the state assembly, governors, and then the president, who is the overall head of the country. If certain issues fail within that level, of course, you lay it squarely on the leadership who you've given that particular power in order to midwife. With regard to the question of politicians, yes, I agree. There's a lot of questions in which the politicians need to answer. Unfortunately, the politicians are those who even find themselves in the position of leadership. If they have been doing what they ought to have done, probably we wouldn't find ourselves in this situation. At a point in time in this country, it's just like a football match. We had leadership that has an opportunity, who have been able to given an opportunity to play a penalty kick in a football match, and then they squander it and then lose instead of hitting the net, they blow the ball over the bar. And here we are again, we have leadership who have been able to dribble everybody to a point in which they now have even dribbled the goalkeeper and then shooting the ball off the post. And that is the situation in which we find ourselves in our country. So we must apportion blame for those who have. And this is where we need to ask the question. Security issues have been tabled. Information have come out when we don't even expect. But the government have not really come out clean to tell us exactly some of this heap of information that they've already gathered over the years. This is not to apportion it only to this particular government. Even successive governments have not been able to do so. But here we are expecting that the government of the day will be able to expose some of these particular heinous crime against the people, but none has been done at the moment. And at the same time, it is not completely true that we say that some of the politicians too have not been able to do what is right. So don't let us use the same brush to sweep everybody. But there are those who are trying to do the right thing. But predominantly, those who have failed the nation have taking more an overlapping position. So we want to challenge everybody that is concerned with the position of leadership. When you are being given leadership, don't forget, it is not only here that you have to account to God himself too. The kind of killing that is taking place in this country is so much unbelievable that you will be thinking that really, do we even have a government in power? And we will call on everybody, those who have the responsibility to checkmate this particular heinous crime, to really act where it is expected of them to act. They cannot leave this country, or we will not allow this country to be in this situation.
Do you see any role for citizens, and what would that be, if you do?
Information sharing. You see, the truth about it is that they have left the country in such a way that they have annihilated those in the grassroots. We have 774 local governments as a third tier of government. But what have we done to this particular local government? We've completely annihilated them in terms of even funding and taking care of them. And maybe until recently when Mr. President decided to send direct funding to the local government. Now, it does make the whole situation so porous in the possibility that people don't really care about people who are living in the rural areas. And that has become one of the major problems of our security challenges. Because the state governors who are saddled with the responsibility of funds being given to them and all, they have gagged these particular resources to themselves alone. They only decide who gets what at what time. And had it been that the federal government has treated them the same way, we would have had a serious situation in our hands. So probably it is time we even advocate for a fourth tier of government, where virtually all the villages and the locality will be apportioned certain amount of money and it go directly to them. So that people will feel the impact of governance. As it is today, majority of the people in the rural areas are not feeling the impact of government. So they let themselves in a situation where they are open for any kind of thing.
Let me take some parts of that issue you raised about governments, both at the local and state level, to Mr. Sanusi Musa. When you cite Section 305, responsibility of states, what it is that they can do in all of these things. But why would any governor who is a chief security officer of their state, will they be in a position to ensure there is peace and stability and then not do it? Because, I mean, it just flies against reason. If they could do it, don't you think they would have done it? Because they won't want to be governing a state that is ungovernable.
Yeah, no, of course. I don't believe there is any person who is leader who would like to see the place in chaos. Certainly no. But what I'm trying to say is that, you see, it is this issue of thinking that if I admit that we have problem, it's like I failed. That is not the issue. The governors are seeing it as if there is problem, as if it is the cause of their opponent. No. When there is a problem, let us admit there is a problem, and there is a limit to what you can do to solve it, and let us involve others to see that we solve it. But this winner takes all, this where everything is restricted to politics. The governors see the opposition as people who are not ready to support them to succeed. And of course, the opposition on the other part, they think that in security matters, they normally jubilate if there is a breach of security, thinking that it's a way for them to capitalize and get some political gain. Forgetting that if those problems, if they do not support the government to solve it, if they get to power, the same problem will be there. So, of course, no governor can do that. But what I'm saying, like the governor of Zamfara, let me read section 305 of 4 for you. It said the governor of state may, with the sanction of a resolution supported by 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly, request the president to issue a proclamation of state of emergency in a state when there is existing within the state any of the situations specified in subsection 3C, D, and E of this section, and such situation does not extend beyond boundaries of that state. Now, what am I trying to say? Is true that what are the three things? Yes, there is actual breakdown of public order and public safety in Zamfara state. There is clear presence of danger in the state. There is occurrence of imminent danger in the state. So instead of you talking to the press, why can't he now seek the support of the state assembly to have that resolution passed, then send it to the president for what is supposed to be done? So, and it goes back, look at how Mr. Tonko was talking. Let me just go back to this issue. And when he's talking about this politician, he's saying they. Who are the they? You know, it's this issue of trying to remove yourself from the problem. When I talk about the politician, even though I'm not holding any political office, but I must agree I'm part of it, it's we the politicians, all of us. And one way or the other, if we don't agree that we are part of the problem,
the fact that you agree that you're part of the problem does not mean he's part of the problem. You are speaking from a point of view that, okay, I've been a part of this, I've seen these things happen,
that's what I'm trying to say.
It. But
that's
he's
what
saying,
I'm trying to say.
He's not a part of it. Do you want him to be a part of it by force? I don't quite understand. That's the problem.
You are part of it, I'm part of it. You are in the media. If one person in the media is doing something that is wrong and you are not trying to put it in the right way, you are also part of the problem.
No.
Even if you put it
I
in
think
the
we should
right
break
way,
this
you are
down
not
so we
supposed
don't. Pardon me. I think we should break this down properly so we don't mess things up. So imagine that a person's village has been attacked, for example, and the person listening is hearing you're part of the problem, and in the person's mind they're thinking, well, I did my best. At least I called security agencies. Are you saying that I invited people to attack me? So to that extent, saying that you are part of it, you're part of it, just paints everybody with the same brush. And I don't think we'll address the problems that way. In fact, referencing Zamfara State, just recently, I don't know if you've seen the executive order that the governor actually announced, talking about all weekly market activities within the state suspended, entry and exit of vehicles. You know, to that extent, that was something he could do without the legislature coming in. So, I mean, specifically speaking now, rather than saying we're all a part of the problem, you can speak about how you can solve the problem, how your party can solve the problem, how the president can solve the problem. And then it's left to the people to know, okay, this is what we can do to solve the problem.
Okay, what I'm trying to say, like the issue of stopping the weekly market, cattle market, is welcome development, because it is in those markets that normally this money this money that is taken by for ransom in the bushes are being laundered. They go there, purchase cows, you know, all this, so that they can be able to have it transported to purchase the arms. But why I'm saying we are part of the problem, when Boko Haram started, it is the same way the people of Maiduguri were not exposing their sons who were part of it until it reaches where it is. It is just like what is happening. I mean, those people, when they started in the villagers know them, but they were not doing what they're supposed to do. They don't inform the security agent. Or rather, even if they inform the security agencies, they are not doing what they're supposed to do. And also, I totally agree, the majority of the blame is with the government. Because if, for instance, the government will have the courage to deal with any civil servant that is found to failed in his duty, either in prosecuting a terrorist or a kidnapper, and if the government will have the courage to deal with any judicial officer that is found to breach the rules in either releasing a kidnapper or a terrorist, all this will go a long way in helping the situation. And if the press will put eye on the judiciary to see that they check that the police and every other person. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is, of course, the men of the blame will go to the government, because the government is voted to provide security for the lives and properties of the people. And when there is breach of that, of course, everybody will blame the government. But what I'm saying, all of us should know that we have a role to play one way or the other for us to get out of the situation we are in now, because it's quite unfortunate. And if we continue the way we are going, I don't see us getting out of the problem in a near future. Unfortunately, this is the truth that we must tell ourselves.
All right, Mr. Tanko, could you just give us, what will your solutions be quickly so that we can wind down on this?
I'm glad that another person, Madam Musa, has come to terms with reality by agreeing that, of course, the buck stop on the time of the people who are leading. Section 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria clearly stipulates that the duties of the leadership for protecting life and properties squarely lies on those who are in charge of the country. So going forward in terms of trying to find solution to the problem, look, the government and the people who are in position of power should come down from their high horse and stop pretending. When there is an accusation being made, it is important for the government to come out clean, to give clear explanation to some of the actions that they have taken, and agree to some of the failures in which that is apportioned to them. Once that is done, there will be a building of trust within the people and then those who are in government. As it is now, there's this particular feeling of completely saying that government keep on denying certain aspect of certain situation happening. That is not right. We are all human beings. If we make mistake, accept it, correct it. The people in the grassroots are actually suffering the heat of this particular situation.
All right, Mr. Tanko.
The government must be able to accept that they have failed in that regard to connect with the people so that they can be able to help them in fighting the situation on ground. But when you continue to deny this particular situation, what you are doing is just heaping more problems to yourself and not having the people to go along with you. At the moment, I must tell you, a lot of Nigerians are completely disillusioned. They are completely
all right, Mr. Tanko, tired. We need to go at this point
to a next solution to the problem. But we will continue to advise that there's hope in the horizon, and then we should continue to give this best support that we can give to the government.
All right, Mr.
But the government
Tanko,
must
thank you
come
very
to
much
it.
indeed for your perspectives. Yunus Tanko is the head publicity national consultative front. We've also had Mr. Sanusi Musa, who is a member of the APC and a legal practitioner. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, let's go right on and take a look at some of the mails. Ejikesa is talking about managing repentant terrorists. He thinks terrorists must be treated as war criminals, and anyone who surrenders should be a prisoner of war. They must face the law. We are a country of laws.
We'll take a look at ABC Samuel's mail. Concerning the surrender of Boko Haram, we have to look into this issue very well, because they are coming back to checkmate us. Their return means a lot. FG should look into this issue very well. God bless Nigeria.
Well, Rachel says it's not a big problem for the government to rehabilitate the member of repented Boko Haram. The real question is, what are they doing for victims of Boko Haram?
Well, let's take this one on party politics. Festus Akimboyewa says the current APC party leadership crisis is a sign that significant divisions remain inside the party after months of crisis that led to the removal of the former elected national chairman. There's also serious problems with the party structures that will need a lot of hard work to repair.
Yeah, so there you go. That is it today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain. So
I'm Kaido Kikelu. Have a beautiful day ahead.